6 heroes corner a black-winged angel named Lufasu as they declare an end to her dominance. One of the heroes slashes his sword through her as they then prepare a seal for her. Lufasu suddenly started praising the heroes, and that maybe they can even win against someone named Efreet. The whole thing is then revealed to be a video game, and that Lufasu was actually the avatar of a boy. Sorry to crush all of your dreams of having a waifu protagonist. Anyways, the boy then starts explaining the game's details, which I'm just not going to get into, but the important part is when he talks about the novel system, which is a system in the game where the actions made by players can be incorporated into the main storyline of the game. Lufasu was an avatar the boy created, and he would use her to invade and conquer every other country in the game to create one single country ruled by him. However, the players decided that having one country isn't very interesting since they can't use the war system anymore. So the boy and the other high-level players discussed with each other, and they decided to divide the forces to two, with one side being ruled by the supreme leader Lufasu, and the other side being led by the heroes. Lufasu ended up losing the war, and the event was officially registered into the game's storyline via the novel system. The boy prepares to close the game and go to bed, but then he notices a woman on the login screen, offering him a new role. The boy identifies the woman as the goddess Venesu, and the one that created the game world. The boy decides to accept the role, and he presses the yes button. The boy blacks out, and he suddenly starts hearing voices, asking if the hero summoning succeeded. However, the voices then began to panic, as they realize that they've accidentally released the seal on the supreme ruler. The boy opens his eyes to find himself in a throne room with everyone trembling and lowering their heads at him. The boy looks in a nearby mirror, and he realized that he has somehow turned into Lufasu, which is also going to be what I'm going to be calling him from now on. Lufasu began to question how this even happened Anyways, Lufasu does the sensible thing that I'm sure many of you would do, and acknowledges how wrong it is for him to be transformed into a woman, and that there is no way she can be smashed. Lufasu decides to get an understanding of the situation by asking everyone in the room. However, when she opens her mouth to speak, a menacing aura is released from her body, which causes everyone to fall to the ground. Lufasu is confused on why her tone changed, and she continued to ask more questions, but what she says would keep on being misinterpreted. Lufasu is confused on what to do, but she realized that it was all because of a skill from the angel race called Overpowering. She turns off the skill, and everyone in the room is lifted from the immense pressure. One of the people panics in the fact that he revived the supreme ruler, and Lufasu identifies him as an elf, and asks him for an explanation on what's going on. The elf explained to her that after 200 years, they still haven't dealt with the demon lord Efreet, so they decided to try to summon a hero, but they ended up summoning Lufasu by accident. Lufasu comes to the realization that this world takes place 200 years after the events of the game. She starts to feel bad for everyone in the throne room for frightening them, so she intends on telling them that she means no harm to them. She tells everyone that she doesn't plan on doing anything to this world, and that she had already tasted defeat and was satisfied with that fight. However, she's still bothered by the fact that the people who defeated her couldn't manage to defeat Efreet, but right now, she is not the supreme ruler and is just a girl who got her dreams crushed. She then takes off and flies away from the castle. Lufasu is excited at the fact that she's flying, and she starts to contemplate on why she was sent to this world. But she is also excited, since she is inside of her favorite game, and became the character she created. However, she's still going to try to find a way to get back home, as she wonders where she'll go first. She suddenly spots a large tower in the distance, which turned out to be her base. She landed on the top of the tower and went inside, revealing a large throne room. She starts feeling nostalgic, even though it should technically be her first time here, and she suddenly gets a flashback to her sitting at a table with a bunch of other people. Lufasu is confused on what those memories are, but she suddenly notices somebody hiding around the corner. A young girl walks out, and her face brightens up when she spots Lufasu. She runs up to her and asks if it's really her, and Lufasu is left wondering who the girl is. Lufasu asks the girl who she is, much to the girl's shock. The girl then calls Lufasu cruel, and she reminds her that she is her advisor Dena, and that she has been waiting in the tower for Lufasu for 200 years. Lufasu is confused since she doesn't remember someone named Dena and her troops, but she suddenly remembers that she had stationed a random NPC girl and gave her the setting of Lufasu's advisor. Lufasu realized that she has to be more assertive, and she apologizes to Dena and thanks her for her services. Dena bows down and says that she's not worthy of such praise. Dena asks Lufasu how she was able to return, and Lufasu told her that she got summoned by mistake by a king who wanted to summon a hero. Lufasu then asked Dena about what happened after she left, and Dena told her that the 7 heroes who defeated her each started a country of their own, and 4 of the 7 have already passed away from old age, but 3 that have a longer lifespan are still alive. Lufasu then wonders if the 7 heroes are also players, and she asks Dena if there's anything else. Dena tells her that the Demon King Efreet is still in good condition, and that the 12 stars of heaven are also all still alive. Dena says she was able to track down half of them, and 2 of them joined Efreet to get revenge on the humans for defeating Lufasu. Lufasu then explains that the 12 stars of heaven are NPCs that can be called friendly monsters, and Lufasu mastered the skill Monster Tamer, which she used to tame boss monsters that only appeared once in official events, and she made the 12 strongest ones generals under her direct supervision. Lufasu is irritated that they are causing trouble, and she says that she'll have to scold them. She then sets an objective to find out if the 3 remaining heroes are also players, and to also recover the 12 stars of heaven if they're acting stupid. Dena informs Lufasu that the closest location to them is the Suil country, with one of the 7 heroes Migres being inside. Then inside the nearby volcano is the Castle of the Dragon, where one of the 12 stars of heaven, Aries the Ram, is located, and that Aries is currently preparing for the invasion of Suil. Lufasu decided that Suil will be the next location that she is headed to. Lufasu is about to leave, but Dena tells her to wait, and she informs Lufasu that her face is too well known. Lufasu counteracts this by saying that it was 200 years ago, and no one would remember her in a world without photos, but Dena calls her naive, since races like the elves have longer lifespans, so they would still clearly remember her. Dena then suggests Lufasu to get a job where the social status and background of a person doesn't matter. And that's how they settled on an adventurer job, just like literally every other iSky fantasy manga out there. Lufasu ended up accepting a commission that required her to exterminate some orcs that have built a nest near a village and have been kidnapping young women and stealing their food. Dena says that the goddess is probably grieving over creating things that are such failures, and she begs Lufasu to quickly get rid of the orcs. Lufasu then revealed that she still has all of her stats that she had from the game, and I'm just going to put them on the screen, since I don't feel like listing them all out. Lufasu can easily deal with the orcs due to her stats being maxed out, but the problem is whether or not she can actually withstand the sight of blood from killing something for the first time. Lufasu then uses one of her skills, Transmutation, to create a bunch of flying swords, which she hurls at the orcs guarding the entrance, killing them in an instant. Lufasu found the aftermath to be gross, and stated that the game is definitely an 18+. However, she is confused as to why her emotions haven't been stirred at all at the sight of this. Suddenly, an entire horde of orcs appear and charges at Lufasu. However, she found their movements to be way too slow, and she ended up easily killing the orcs. She then stormed through the entire lair, killing every single orc without even batting an eye. Dena then teleports the orcs' corpses with her special teleportation magic. She sent the corpses back to the tower to process into meat. Lufasu then uses her transmutation skill to create a giant arm, which she uses to smash the entire lair, since the orcs sent would have called for other orcs. Lufasu and Dena return to the village, and they're handed their reward money. However, the villagers are still concerned on whether or not more monsters would show up, and whether they'd have enough money to pay for more commissions. Lufasu overhears them, and she uses her transmutation skill to create a golem to defend the village. She then swiftly leaves the scene, as she departs for the country Suil. We then fast forward to Lufasu and Dena arriving in Suil. Dena asks Lufasu where they're headed first, and Lufasu said she would like to meet Migres. However, she would need to gather some information first, since there is still a lot to this world that she doesn't know about. Dena suggests they go to the library since it would be the most suitable place to fill up on Lufasu's lack of knowledge, and Lufasu agrees. They ask a local where the library is, and he offers to guide them halfway there. He then introduces himself as Gantz, a mercenary protecting the borders. Dena asked Gantz if he could tell them more about the country, and he explains that Suil is a stronghold protected by a lake, and it's divided into 5 areas, which I'm not gonna list out, but it's up on the screen for you. Someone suddenly calls for Gantz and tells him that his break is over and to get back to his post. Gantz bears the duo farewell and takes off. Lufasu then takes a look at his stats with one of her skills, and she finds them to be extremely low, and asks Dena if he was a novice mercenary. However, Dena tells her that the standards for fighting now are much lower than the ones from 200 years ago. She tells Lufasu that you'd only have one life, so getting to level 1000 without losing your life is a seemingly impossible task. Lufasu then realized that she was able to achieve it because it was a game, so she was able to resurrect over and over again whenever she died. Dena then informs Lufasu that they've arrived at the library, and the duo heads inside. Lufasu is surprised to find a lot of books inside the library actually talking about her in a positive light, and Dena asked her if she was surprised that she isn't hated that much, since the people under her control didn't have to fear any demons, unlike now. Lufasu then reads a book about her history, and it discusses how the humans rejected Lufasu, but they ended up pleasing the demons as a result of their biggest threat being taken care of. The 7 heroes rose an army of novices to fight against the demons, but they had lost their union due to the battle against Lufasu, so they ended up losing to the demons. As a result, 60% of the world became the demons' territory, and humanity currently controls around 30% of the world. The 7 heroes have been reduced to 3, with the 3 maintaining a temporary peace, and it wouldn't be surprising if the world were to suddenly collapse. Lufasu is shocked to learn that the world is on the verge of destruction. Suddenly, an earthquake begins shaking the entire library. Lufasu asks Dena how frequent earthquakes are in the country, and she tells Lufasu that they're very rare. Lufasu then remembers her giving the power to create earthquakes to a certain sheep, and she tells Dena that he is most likely coming. The scene then cuts over to Gantz at the front gate, as the soldiers have to push back the enemy until the main army arrives from the castle. The earthquake from earlier was meant to be a declaration of war, as he would imitate it from his master. That he being one of the 12 stars of heaven, Aries, with his level sitting at 800. Meanwhile, in the castle, someone informs Migres of Aries' attack and begs him to protect everyone. Migres responds by saying that he'll attack him with Revia. Meanwhile, Lufasu uses her transmutation skill to create a floating platform, and she launches herself and Dena towards the battlefield. We then see a flashback of when Lufasu first met Aries when he was just a small rainbow sheep. She asked him if he was crying, and told him what was the point of those tears, since he should be using his time to steal back rather than cry over being robbed. Aries then bites her arm in a fit of rage, and Lufasu tells him to come with her, and that they'll become stronger together.
End of flashback.
The scene then cuts to Gantz and the other soldiers struggling. One of the monsters suddenly slices his leg, and Gantz's life starts flashing before his eyes, but he is suddenly saved by some water, as Migres has finally arrived on the battlefield, sitting on a wheelchair. The soldiers rejoice, as Migres then unleashes this water dragon thing named Levia, and ordered it to exterminate the monsters. Levia creates a bunch of spears using water, and it pierces every single monster with them. Lufasu is observing the battle from afar, and she uses her observing eye skill to look at Levia's stats. She concludes that Levia has a chance of winning against Aries, since his attribute is fire, and Levia's is water, and Migres is also in the battle, and he is level 1000, just like Lufasu. However, when Lufasu looks at Migres' stats, she discovered that he lost half of his level and stats, and lost several classes. He also had some weird debuffs on him as well. Dena tells Lufasu that there was a rumor that Migres got cursed, and she said that after being defeated by Ifrit, it was rumored that the 7 heroes got cursed, and they got in a state where they're only able to manifest half of their original strength, which means that Migres needs to win against Aries without losing Levia. Dena suddenly informs Lufasu that Aries has arrived on the battlefield. He prepares to launch a fire attack, and Migres tells everyone to get behind him, as Aries unleashes his skill Mizaltim, which will inflict constant damage simply by touch. Migres was able to intercept the attack with a tidal wave, but Aries dodged it by leaping into the air, But Migres sent Livia after him, with Livia managing to entangle Aries, and the people start cheering for its victory. However, Migres is panicking, as the water vapor on Livia is being evaporated with no way to recover, as he realized that it was Aries' true plan from the start, but it was too late to back up now. Dena asked Lufasu what she thought of the battle, and she tells her that Livia has the advantage, and that it would win the battle. However, Aries' true objective is to decrease Livia's max HP, weakening it for the next battle. Lufasu acknowledges that Aries has become very crafty, and Dena responds by saying that it was Lufasu who taught Aries how to fight like that. Lufasu mentions how rainbow sheep are meant to be peaceful monsters, but Aries would constantly invade because of the heroes defeating Lufasu, and that's exactly why she has to stop him. Lufasu and Dena suddenly leap off the platform they were standing on. Lufasu apologizes to Aries and tells him that she's not looking for revenge, and that she also never ordered him to carry out revenge for her, as she then kicks him in the face, while telling him to cool off. Lufasu then turns to Migres and tells him that he seems to be struggling, and that she'll give him a hand. Migres is stunned after hearing her voice, as he seemed to have figured out Lufasu's identity. He suddenly tells Lufasu to wait, and informs her that there seems to be someone pulling the strings, and they're using Aries' desire for revenge. He tells her that if she is who he thinks she is, then be careful. Lufasu then takes off to confront Aries, since I guess she managed to kick him back 1,000 feet or something. Lufasu then recounts how Aries is actually the first of the 12 stars of heaven she met, and she suddenly refers to him as a crying sheep. However, Lufasu gets confused by this, since she doesn't remember a crying sheep in the game, and it's just like what happened earlier, where unknown memories would suddenly appear in her head. She then comes to the conclusion that perhaps the original Lufasu's memories are merging with hers. Lufasu finally arrives at Aries' location, and he asks her who she is. Lufasu suddenly releases her aura and takes off her disguise. Aries is in disbelief and says that Lufasu has died, and he calls her a phantom and tells her to disappear. Lufasu then suggests to test whether or not she's the real deal with their bodies, and I know what you're thinking, but she tells Aries to come at her and show her how much he's grown in the past 200 years. Aries charges at her with his full force, but Lufasu easily stops the attack and calls him cute as she proceeds to lift him up with only one arm. She then slams Aries into the ground, and she tells him that he doesn't need to hold back. Aries then unleashes all of his fire power, but Lufasu was able to easily block the attack, and she tells him that she's going to pat him for 200 years worth of patting, as she then proceeds to slam Aries back into the ground. She then raises her fist to deliver one final punch. She then approaches a battered-up Aries and tells him to come with her. A flash of light suddenly envelopes Aries, and a girl suddenly drops down from the sky. The girl then embraces Lufasu's boingers and starts crying. Lufasu then notices that the girl has rainbow shiny hair, and she realizes that the girl is somehow Aries.